And actually, before I start, quick show of hands. How many investors are there in the room? Okay, I see. Wow, it's quite a lot. Okay, including friends on the panel. And how many startups, especially those in the fintech space, looking to raise capital in the next 18 to 24 months? Okay, good. Okay, so I saw more investors than startups. So which leads to my first question, actually. So, we see Southeast Asia being the next gold rush for venture investors. Debneel and the Vertex raised a $210 million fund. Is that correct? 210? Yeah, US, right? And then a few other venture firms have also, announced, big, funds dedicated to investing in the region. So I guess my first, just kick things off, and we can have a more in-depth discussion, is whether the venture landscape is very crowded. It's getting too crowded, with many venture investors looking for the next unicorns. You want to start? Mario, why don't you start?
I guess completely. I think in the past 18 to 24 months, we've seen a significant attention and increase not only of institutional investors, but actually even corporate venture capital, banks setting up to invest in the region. And I think that the answer that I can give is it depends. We've seen a significant concentration of investments, especially in the early stage type of ventures, in a significant attention in that stage. When it comes however, on scale-ups, and so, post-Series B or C and D, the region between venture capital and growth private equity, we've seen actually quite limited number of investors. And in fact, that's when some of the startups are finding more and more difficult to raise capital. And I guess, not to bring water under my bridge, but that's why I think we created Future Labs as a way to scale up distinctive innovators, provide the right capital, and granted that capital is no longer enough, but help them bridge to become global leaders and regional leaders. But certainly we've seen an increase, dramatic, but it depends on what stage of investment cycle.
Oh, perfect. Actually, Debneel, this reminds me of how we first met, because I was still in the government, trying to kickstart startups, and I think the number of startups is probably 10%. Where is it now? And then we have collaborated then. But the landscape has now changed dramatically. So, Debneel, you want to comment?
Yeah, I guess yes, there is a lot of traction that is happening from probably say 4 years or 5 years back, when there was a special scheme from NRF to promote the early stage. And I see this as a good thing to happen. And I think more and more the VCs will be now pushed towards doing the early stage, which is the most critical stage, as you will see the bigger internet players who, in order to survive, is also trying to move into this space, and that's where they will probably pick up the later stage ones. So the market is also quite big, it's increasing, newer opportunities are coming up, and even if you see those who have missed the bus in China or in India, this is one great place, which is probably the last remaining bastion in Asia and probably much of the world. You can't forget there are 650 million people we are talking about, with huge pent-up demand, aspirational value, very low technology adoption curve, a larger disposable income, demographics, favorable demographics. So I guess there is a huge room. The thing that the VCs need to do is to not be chasing deals, but finding those standout deals to invest in.
Southeast Asia, we are not a single market. We are maybe just 4 or 5 major markets. So if we compare to China, I think we are just quite small. If you see, China is the bigger one, like Tencent and maybe Alibaba. If they're coming here, those deals, they are interested actually at the later stage. So I think maybe the startup things like that, I think there will be more revenue for us to look for more investors coming to this area.
last comments?
Yeah, I guess so far what we saw in the market is that the market is getting hot, but still not so overcrowded. Just like 3 weeks ago, we had our annual meeting in Beijing. My colleagues complained to me over the last few weeks they lost like 2 deals to competitors because everyone had so much money and chasing so few opportunities. And for us in this region, at least, that's not something we are seeing yet. I guess on the other side, although we see a lot of new funds setting up, apparently this year's Fintech Festival is much larger than last year. That means we see a lot more startups. So the supply and demand both are growing fast. So far, I think it's really playing positive for everyone else.
Very good. I think that's a very good sign that we have more startups as well. So actually, for the benefit of the startups in the audience, and we have many esteemed investors on the panel, so it's very rare to get their time. How do investors like yourself measure the success of digital platforms and fintech companies? What are the attributes that you look at, and what are the attributes that you will pay particular attention to?
I think for investor, there are 2 aspects. The financial aspect, for investor, we would like to firstly to have good financial returns. So I think for a company, we will hope that they're doing well, perhaps provide a good return to the investor. Otherwise, there won't be a second fund. But the other aspect, of course, for investor, we like to be associated with a company that have innovative products. Hopefully, the innovation can create a better life, and the innovation can have acceptance, adoption by the mass media. If it's not recognized, if there's no adoption, it will be just another bright idea. It will die off eventually. And for fintech, we believe for fintech, we always talk about disruptive products, and I would like to refer them to maybe an alternate solution. If the alternate solution can gain acceptance, without adoption, but the same industry that they set out to change, and I will call that success. And I was sharing with my colleague earlier on that a couple of months back, I was looking for a taxi. It was a Sunday evening, and for me, I grew up with Comfort Taxi. If you're in Singapore, you know Comfort Taxi is the taxi company. It was a Sunday evening. After the second try, there's no answer. I switched to Grab. And guess what? A Comfort Taxi appeared. It's how annoyed you can be that you're going to support Comfort, but you go Grab and a Comfort Taxi appeared. I got into the car, was a bit angry, but then I had a conversation with him. Then I asked him why he did that. He was quiet for a while, but it's a true story. He told me, if you cannot beat them, join them. So I guess that's for adoption.
Mario, I recall you are specializing in B2B platforms. So any comments on what you're looking at?
Yeah, actually, how we evaluate the performance of startups is one of our major questions we receive from our own investors, the LPs. And we take the view that, look, it's all about the end client impact that these companies can generate. In particular, we're focused on B2B, and so there is a deep emphasis on understanding how you're going to add to the economics of your large financial institutions. Are you going to lower their cost to serve clients, generate more revenues, improve customer experience? And we place a disproportionate emphasis on those metrics to evaluate the distinctiveness of your value proposition, because we sponsor the view that if that actually is really distinctive, of course, the financials will be reflected, in the financials of the startup, right? The second metric that we use to evaluate startups is really around scalability, right? We certainly are, focusing on B2B. Means that you need to be able to scale with the size of corporate clients. They have significant volumes. They're not looking at innovation just to scale into a small segment of their clients. And so scalability becomes an important metric of evaluation in our case. And of course, at the end, it's always reflected on some of the financial metrics in the startup, operating KPIs at the beginning, and then of course revenues and profitability.
Debneel, Kapil?
I guess again the metrics remains more or less the same. Essentially, the proof of the pudding has to be eating, and so therefore we basically try to see most important thing that we feel for a startup is speed. That's something we forget, because if we can't do the same thing quickly, that's the entry barrier. That's the natural entry barrier that one can create. And on top of that, if you see in fintech, the more complex stuff becomes is you don't just not have to do it in speed, but you have to scale, and also must have quick adoption. The operators, so because this is a regulated space, and here you have high street banks as one of the key operators. So you have to be getting adopted. And then all this has only one underlying layer, and that layer is essentially you have to create delight at every nook and in every corner. You have to do something which has been not done before. You must have to create either a cost delight or a service delight, and keep on doing that again and again, and that's where it has to come. The further thing that comes in, probably because fintech is quite a hype, is that it's quite a busy space. We see a lot of people who are doing this, many of the same and the same of the many. And that's where I think one has to really stay away from. And they are doing it quite slowly. And that doesn't work.
Yeah, I guess so. We always get asked by startup what kind of traction measures we are looking for, and startups before they come to us. I mean, to be frank, every time my answer is that we don't really have any unique numbers to track, because we constantly invest pre-launch product, zero revenue product, zero revenue companies. Just like recently we invested in SoCash, that's really a pre-launch company. So what we look at, I generally feel it this way. So measures or metrics or numbers are very superficial things, get the attentions from the investors. But during the meetings, and investors always ask many questions. I constantly disrupt the startup's answer to ask the question I want, because I just want to understand what they are thinking logic. I was trying to look for a story to kind of like tell my feeling. So just now I was thinking probably more like food, right? The smell and the look of the food is what attracts you to the food. But in the end, whether you like the food is after you really taste it, like durian, right? Some people smell it, don't want to try it again. Some people smell it, don't want to try it, but somehow they have to try it and they fall in love, right? So that's happens with a lot of startups. So in the end, it's more like, do you have a way to lead the investors' interest to explore what's behind the numbers or what's behind the tractions, and show that you have a very strong value system or value position to the investors. Yeah, that's what we care.
Great analogy. So Kemping is smelling durians every day.
So my experience, so when I come to Singapore in the beginning, I didn't dare to try, but the first time I tried, I love it.
Switching gears a little bit, I think one of the big trends that we are seeing as well, and someone just told me this, which is that 50% of the funding in the Valley, I think this quarter, are funded by ICOs. So 50% traditional VC funding, 50% is now ICOs. And on the other spectrum, you have this 100 billion, vision fund funded by Masayoshi Son. And people are coining this term called the Masapio. So why go public if you can go Masapio, right? And I was told again, I haven't fact checked this, but the Vision Fund has deployed 2 times more capital than all the VCs combined, globally. So I suppose with these 2 trends, and I think anecdotally speaking to some entrepreneurs, they tell me that it's easier to write a white paper and get 10 million from ICO than to get 1 million from a VC like us. So if you compound these three forces, right, what do you think will happen to our industry? Mario.
Thank you for putting me on the spot. And I love the food analogy. I'm Italian, so I can appreciate that very well. Look, I actually was just in Hong Kong yesterday speaking at the venture capital panel, and I got asked the same question, so I'll just rephrase my own answer. I think that look, ICO are definitely a trend worth monitoring. It's been the speed and scale has really broken all records. In my view, ICO's value proposition is very different than the value proposition of a venture capital, right? Whether you look at it from an investor perspective or a startup perspective. The type of due diligence that from an investor perspective, the venture capital puts together, the possibility of structuring the deal so that you mitigate the risk of the downside and also optimize for the upside is something that is not possible with ICOs. I guess, as you said, many of these ICOs are really issued on a white paper and nothing else. So even if you want, you cannot do a much due diligence. On the startup side, of course, you get capital, but we are always pushed to do more in venture capital. Capital has largely become a commodity, and I think we sponsor the vision that a venture capital firm to really add value needs to contribute to the venture building and scale up. At least that's what we do, providing significant market access to our B2B corporate clients, the talent network that we can gather together to accelerate the scale up. So as a startup, of course, you don't get that if you are doing an ICO. Having said that, look, we monitor it. We think that there is some merits around liquidity, the ability to potentially for an investor to liquidate independently of fundraising. And then the key question becomes, it's liquidity at what risk? In the current context, without regulation, with exposure to fraud, potentially, we think that the risk way outweighs the benefits. But it's something that over time, maybe with the right context, could be another avenue for us to fund early stage entrepreneurs. Help them create a minimum viable product. Help them get traction with some capital around clients. And then I think there is still a very big role for institutional investors. Once you have had that early traction, to come and invest in you in that particular company with a lot more confidence. So that's our take so far.
ICO concept is still very new in Southeast Asia. And a lot of people say that what happens in China, eventually Southeast Asia will get some of the experience. But lately we hear a lot of news about ICO exchange being closed down by the regulator. So this is something that I think right here we have to be very mindful. If we do it wrongly, I think this market will just die off. So it is a good idea. If I'm a company, if I can do ICO, why not? You can issue without dilution. If you're in a second run of fundraising, a third run of fundraising, I think with the product that's been proven in the first run, I think it's something that we can try. So the regulator have really encouraged sandbox kind of experience, and something that I think we should be open about it, and hopefully we have some successors, and then I think this space will maybe flourish a little bit more.
Yeah, I guess ICO is more like a tool that everyone can use. Currently, people treat it as an industry, but going forward, over the long term, it will be a tool that VC can use to help the portfolio companies or invest in ICO to find a way to achieve exit for the capitals. In the end, for VC, the biggest value is not the money they have, right? For VC, the biggest money is just the time we spend to understand the companies, to do due diligence on the company, on the industry, to understand the model and to manage the money for our LPs in an efficient way. So one of the most respected VC in the US is Union Square Ventures. Recently, Fred wrote a post, they reviewed like 500 ICOs, in the end only invested 2 or 3. That's the kind of value that we see brings. Same thing, I mean, over the last few years, when mobile startup is hot, everyone is investing in more startups. In the end, only a few will be able to survive over the long term and make money, generate return for LPs. And I just believe that ICO will be a tool for all the smart investors over the long run.
Debneel, anything there?
I would guess that all the three have their own place to stay, and it's not so much of a watertight compartment. After all, we are in a disruptive space. There are many moving parts, much of which we don't even have visibility, especially when it comes to regulation with ICO. But then there's a very important aspect is that what a true startup also looks at is the smart money as it is the dumb money. And therefore, the role of a VC in helping the startup maybe not to so much how to run his business, but to open it to new markets and newer downstream larger investors who are going to write a bigger check for a higher valuation is very, very vital. And if that passing of the baton in that days does not happen, the link gets completely disrupted. So from that standpoint, I guess there's a significant role for them to play. And then players like Masa, I think they are wonderful things to have because they are further down in the value chain and hope there are more such people who are doing it, and much of the money gets routed through them because then they are the real conduits who can pick up the later stage ones and take them to scale speedily. Because here, the two S's, we must remember, for a startup to be successful, they must invest in something called speed capital. And they have to scale quickly. So with that, I think the way you see these investments have helped them scale in large markets like India, China. They are wonderful places to be. So I find them very interesting developments and very positive about all three. And no one need to worry about it.
Fantastic insights. Actually, on that note, as a corollary, right? I mean, you see the cost of starting a business has dropped, right? You have AWS, you have ICO, you have offshore manufacturing. So actually, the power of money drops, right? So, and as a result of that, the power shifts from the financiers like us to the entrepreneurs. And as a result, global firms, venture firms, which used to just sit in Sand Hill Road and wait for entrepreneurs to come, now are actually going globally to find the best companies to invest in. So with this trend, how do you think people like us can reinvent ourselves?
When your boss starts talking about reinventing yourself, seems a big issue. I think for fund, for VC, there's only two parts of funding and investment. We see a lot of trend in the funding. There's a bit the industry is healthy, but the competition may shift a little bit. You see some VC having some innovative product. For example, Our Crowd is a platform whereby they invite accredited investors to join their investment, and they themselves is a VC. So is it a way to raise funds and join in the bigger tickets to investment? This is something that is more effective and more efficient, is number one. And then for the investment, and I can say that lately, as I said earlier, Southeast Asia is 4 to 5 major market. And a lot of companies seems their products, they like cross-border products, they like to be able to sell their products in many other markets. And a lot of collaboration that will then occur. So basically we believe that there will be a lot of collaboration and not just competition, especially if you have network Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia and Thailand. If we work together, certain product can actually penetrate this market, and a lot of collaboration will actually bring this pipe on people. So I think maybe we invent in this next space. Yeah.
We have to be thoroughly disruptive if you want to survive. And for that, the first thing we have to tell ourselves, what brought us here will not take us there. So essentially, we made an investment in 2012, and it's still Singapore's top quartile exit. As I keep saying, England must be smiling because he knows what it was. But today in 2015, we had that exit. But 2015, if those companies were brought to us for investing, we would not even have done them. That's a realization. Every day we have to knock us and tell us that we don't know. And we must try to figure out what we don't know and how we find that out. instead of what I see a trend, a very dangerous trend, is that we try to follow the market. Until yesterday, when a founder was not getting money, somebody decides to be brave and writes him a check. Immediately, every VC prowls on him and starts making counter offer. It's like an auction going on. That's not the way. That's where you are so far having a cold feet, and then suddenly you jump in because you feel that, oh, your fellow VC is going ahead in the curve from you. These are the kind of trends we have to break, and we have to remember our business is all about traveling in lonely roads, which are seldom traveled. So we have to go to faraway places, we have to go to faraway markets, and within the existing markets, we have to go into those nook and corners and find those startups and the founders who are doing really exceptional stuff and who are very, very high caliber. And that's the hard work, that's the heavy lifting. We can't deny that. So that's what will keep us. If you don't do it, we will be destroyed.
Yeah, Mario.
No, I completely agree. I think that, especially in B2B, we've seen like this is a global market. The VCs are looking at opportunities globally, and that's like also what we're doing. In terms of disrupting ourselves and reinventing ourselves, well, we were lucky enough not to have been like so long. Like we've started 5 years ago, but we sponsor very much the view that venture capital, long are the days like of just spreading capital across a number of portfolio companies and hoping that one will make it very big, and then like the others can fail, etc. You still survive. So in our view, we place a disproportionate emphasis on how do we add value to our portfolio companies, so we build them into global players, into global leaders, like in their field. That, of course, like also puts us at a particular, the focus that we have is to really find best of breed, like companies that we trust, like to then bring, on a global scale. The second part, like that we try to do, and without obviously, unveiling a secret sauce, is we try to play to our strengths. I mean, our strengths are around the convening power that we have with large corporates, large financial institutions, and I think that in many ways they still all like significant assets. Like think about like huge amount of data, huge amount of customer bases, and so we try to help them unlock the value of these assets by co-creating and creating proprietary pipelines of new startups that we jointly carve together. We put capital, we put like our talent, and the new innovation that we see is all about ecosystems, right? And so helping like companies that come from different industries contribute data that is diverse, and unlock the value of that into new verticals. It's like the new way that we're thinking of adding value and create like a tremendous amount of opportunities, and that's perhaps like where we play to our strengths.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess Mario already mentioned all the points I want to say, but maybe it's a simple way to reinvent ourselves. I guess we can rename ourselves. It used to be called VC, now we can call ourselves operational VC or strategic VC. But joke aside, I guess that's really the thing we want to do. I mean, help to bring values to our portfolios so that then need a better reputation for us among our current portfolio and any future potential portfolios. Then on top of that, I guess technically like banks, right? So banks operate for like many years with very deep insight. It's very difficult for a startup to just come in and interrupt. And then most of the fintech startup actually choose to work with banks. Same for us, like for VCs, we believe in that we for our industry we have a lot of know-hows. It's very difficult, kind of difficult for companies to disrupt. But they produce tools for us. For example, Kickstarter for the pre-sale marketing, or Circle Up for data collection, or ICOs as a way to raise further capital for some part of the business. Then on top, then other things like for like Ina mentioned, VC used to be sitting in office waiting for companies to call them. nowadays, VCs also build our, I guess, called public
Question if I open up the floor, which is that I think as Southeast Asia becomes more interesting, it's similar to the Game of Thrones now. So you have the BATs from China, actually more ATs, and then you have the second generation, the TMDs, right? Hotel, Meituan, and Didi from China, and then you have the GAFAs from the US, Google, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook, and then you have the RA from Japan, right? Rakuten, SoftBank, and Recruit. So how do you think this Game of Thrones will play out in Southeast Asia?
I can tell you that, well, let me take a sec. We were looking at a couple of companies in China last year, like in the healthcare data and analytics space, and we got way outbid by like one of the BATs, right? So clearly, look, they are significant players. They clearly have a name and a reputation that appeals to startups, and so our view is that if you cannot beat them, join them, and we tend to collaborate, with some of them, like we find ways that we can add value. For example, a lot of them are thinking about strategically how do they internationalize their operations, right? How do they build platforms outside of China? And we become, perhaps, like a partner of choice in many ways because of our experience in scale-ups outside, but also, like the other geographic markets. So in my view, look, there is, ways that, one can collaborate in addition to compete with some of these players.
I'm really happy what is happening. For VC industry, what we don't want to see is that there's no one building startups, no one acquiring startups, and no one training the next generation of entrepreneurs. So I joined Vertex 7 years ago. When I joined Vertex, there are literally only a few internet startups in this region. But since 5 years ago, Lazada came in and trained like 2,000, 3,000 of internet entrepreneurs. Now have been active at every corner of the internet ecosystem, right? Then recently, some of portfolio get investment from Didi, from Alibaba, from all the famous internet companies from China, and then quite a lot of Chinese funds travel here once a while. So far, not so frequently yet. So that's why I'm really happy what's happening now, and I'm very positive about their involvement. So I guess what we care is that they will help to build up the startup or the internet ecosystem for this region, and with this ecosystem, then we will have all the talent, all the resource, all the connection we need, all the data we need to foster the next generation of internet entrepreneurs for this market. Yeah.
I agree with what Debneel said. I think we should collaborate with them. We should join them. And I guess with the big monies coming in, smaller VC or the medium-sized VC will be more comfortable to invest, knowing that if the company is doing well, somebody will buy us out. So I think it's a collaboration kind of cooperation, and for them, they should be willing to work with domestic VC, regional VC that know the market well, and then perhaps we can work together to make the pie a bit bigger. So instead of competing, I think we work in a different supply chain, and perhaps we get the pie much bigger. Yeah.
I don't know, Ilan, who wins the Game of Thrones, but if you really look at it, it's a wonderful thing that can ever happen to the whole startup ecosystem. Because for us, the grand finale is the exit, be it for the investors or be it for the founders. And with all this Game of Thrones going on, and the Japan, China, America, big VCs, big corporates, competition coming in, all that it creates is large velocity and very big throughput. As a result, the market grows in size, and more people are attracted towards doing a startup, and people investing in startup. And so it's a fantastic thing that can happen for the ecosystem. That said, I guess from the big guys, whoever will be going down to the brass tacks, picking up the right companies to invest in, probably they will win the Game of Thrones, and they will keep doing it consistently by being contrarian yet correct. I think they will have a better chance of winning the game. And there is also a lot of collaboration. If you see in India, there has been investment by Alibaba and SoftBank together, and these have become very, very big. So yeah, I mean, for us, it's a wonderful thing to happen.
No, I was just gonna reiterate that I think like a lot about the new economy is about collaboration, and I think that the definition of competition becomes a little bit blurred. Like in some ways you compete, in some ways you collaborate. I have huge respect like for some of these companies for what like they're created, like being completely disruptive, especially like some of the Chinese like BATs in creating these new ecosystems, right? And I think we see it very much as the future where industries' boundaries are blurring, and now you have a telco company that become a media company, becomes a fintech company, right? It's really all about redefining actually industries and verticals, and we see that not only happening in China, but it's already happening in other parts of the world, and that's actually where I think like Asia can become really a leader in terms of these innovative behaviors that frankly we don't even see in the US in many ways.
But let me just add on. When you look at those companies coming in with the big money, there are certain sub-sectors they are interested in. For example, e-commerce place that we see Alibaba go for like Lazada, all that. We see on-demand, like Uber kind of platform. Maybe lending and payment, due to the sub-sector space that we think big player in other part of the world comes in. So maybe there's an area that will be more focused, and there's a space that we can grow.
Just want to add, I guess Game of Thrones, the most exciting part about that for me is that all the kings who only live forever, already killed by someone that gave everyone hope.
Great quote. So on that note, I want to make sure there's a lot of startups in the audience, also some co-investors. I want to make sure there's enough time for questions from the audience. Any questions? I think someone will come over and hand you a mic. Okay, hand in the back. There is. Yeah. Okay, after is coming to you.
This is a very interesting subject about how you compete against the internet giants. I am really fascinated by this whole market change to the internet. And what I've found in some of the things I do is how very narrow some of the verticals are that you can address and be successful. So let me give you an example. I started a company up that went after not auto retailers, which is where people buy cars, but auto detailers. You might say, good God, detailers. Every town has an auto detailer, and they have very special requirements that I doubt that an internet giant knows about. So you're dealing with every facet of business, every type of vertical is moving to a tech refresh, that very often an internet giant will never get there quick enough. It's too small for them. They can't get into that narrowly defined area. For instance, if I said to you, how can you invest in a company that addresses auto detailers? What a narrow spectre. But there's a big business there. So in my view, it's not about the internet giants. They're already moved on. They're already working on all kinds of data and so on. But there's massive opportunities worldwide in very narrow little sectors as they go through tech refresh. But thank you for a great presentation.
Any comments or responses to that?
I guess that's where, as I was saying, everyone in the ecosystem has a place to stay, and the ecosystem is probably evolving more on the positive side than on the negative side. So these are like examples of roads that are seldom traveled. And it's for us, the VCs, to find them out and grow them in the initial phase quickly, and so that then they can become big. And eventually, earlier the fear was, where is the exit? But with these large players around, that part of the market opens up. There's a very big funnel at the end of it where we can see exits, if you can do it well.
And I think you're like, just to add to that comment, you completely agree. And nowadays, you're like, the new technologies not only enables to add real value to these like mini verticals, but also scale them to a level that was unprecedented before, because of the hyper connectivity that mobile internet has, etc. So now you can actually build some real, transformative business, even from niche, type of segments, so to speak, very detailed, but hopefully can do that across geographies or in other fun. So to me, it's what was already said, around, look, it's important to find where you want to play and where you can add real value.
Any questions? Great question, by the way. I have a few of my own, but I want to make sure there's enough time for the audience. Any others? Rare opportunity.
Silence.
My experience says work locally, but think global and go global fast.
Yeah, of course. So the most important thing which we have been talking in the panel today, if you ask me to do speak out one word, is speed. We have to do things fast. And if it doesn't work, we must call it a day. We must be prepared to morph it, pivot it, or even bury it. But whatever we do, we have to do it fast, and we have to go into those places where value is still hiding and not discovered. Many of the same of the many will not work.
One other thing, the US and China is very big in internet giants, but are they trusted?
If you really look at it, probably nobody is trusted. And we did, but I would rather answer it in a different way. We don't even need to worry about it. Let's look at it as the world as our oyster. And we are not humans. It is only the politicians. So 1,000 years back, the clergy used to separate us on the lines of religion. And today the politicians break us up in the lines of nationalism. So let's make the world flat instead. Technology is actually something which has made the world flat. And no power on earth, no political power on earth, no national power on earth, including America, no matter how much they browbeat, they can't reverse this. So let's not worry about all those things, whether they're trusted or not trusted. Let's try and figure out how we can make ourselves safe and secure. That's it. And only technology can do that.
The end of the Chinese. They have to be trusted.
So it's more like, do you really care that you can trust them with your data, or do you want to derive more value from the data? So the Chinese, my friends in China, they never care about privacy. They care about the convenience, right? For them, they are willing to sacrifice privacy for China, for convenience, and for all the actual value they get. And at the moment they feel that the giant don't understand their needs, and really complain. They basically they feel like they give all the access to their data, but how come the giant don't understand them? So I guess in the end it's more like what do you want to derive, and what do you want to get from the ecosystem? And every country, every citizen have different type of feelings. I guess nowadays I also saw that saw some comments from US. Some young generation actually they don't really care about privacy that much. They want the convenience part.
think my sense is the same. Right? It's part of the evolution of the market. You see that in some cases there is other elements that are more valid, right? Convenience, cost, etc., and that gets preferred. I mean, you could argue that Apple, on the other hand, like in the US, has built a business first, of course, on design and beautiful design, but more importantly, on protecting the data of the end users. And that's actually in many ways why the second generation of people that use Apple, perhaps value that a lot more than a design that now everyone has copied, or there is even better potentially.
On that note, I wanted to wrap the panel up by asking the panelists to give, given that there's many fintech entrepreneurs in the audience, what would be the one advice in one sentence? One advice that you give a fintech entrepreneur in today's environment with ICOs, with the mass IPO, with Durans, and with all these fascinating trends that we see. One advice.
Today, if you can do ICO, do ICO. It's really hard.
For this, follow your passion, don't follow the trend.
Essentially, do what you know what you are doing and do it quickly. Don't waste time on the way.
ASEAN is, I think we have 4 to 5 markets. If this market doesn't work, try the other one. You never know.
On that note, please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists for sharing our insights.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists. Let's give them a round of applause again. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's certainly insightful and interesting. I'd just like to make a short announcement. I found a pair of glasses in red. If somebody